All right, let's move on now to the third Saturday in October. College Game Day will be there. It'll be at 3:30 Eastern Time on CBS. Alabama and Tennessee are meeting as top 10 opponents for the 11th time in the series, but just the second time this century. All right, so it's the first time in a while that we've seen these teams in the top 10 and being able to really put this matchup, this rivalry kind of back on the map, man. It's been a while, and I'm glad that it's back in its rightful place to be there at the top of the college football conversation. Tennessee's lost 4 straight AP top 10 matchups at home. That's the longest streak in the poll era. There's some weird numbers for Alabama, okay? You look at the numbers for Alabama, some things that just flat out don't make sense. All right, they're top 5 in both points per game and points per game differential, but they're also have a -6 turnover margin, which is 121st in college football. Like, that's mind-blowing to me. Like, Alabama, top 5 in points per game and points per game differential, but -6 in turnover margin. That's wild. That's wild to me when I think about Alabama. Let's talk a little bit about Alabama's defense against Tennessee's offense, because that ultimately declare who's going to be the winner, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time. Okay, we'll talk about Bryce Young and everything in just a second, but the Vols are scoring at 62% of their drives. That's pretty dang good. It's best in the country. All right. On the other side, Alabama ranks 6th in the nation in total defense and scoring defense. So if you look at where they're at, the tempo, I think is going to be really interesting. Tennessee's snapping the ball with about 19 seconds on the shot clock or so. Every 21.3 seconds to be exact. Okay. That's the 5th fastest pace in the FBS. Over the last 10 years, and this was a stat that surprised me, Alabama is actually 17-1 in games where its opponent averaged snap on 22 or fewer seconds per play. The lone loss actually came in the 2017 National Championship game. That was against Clemson when Deshaun Watson hit Hunter Renfrow in the front right corner of the end zone. So Alabama, I guess, contrary to popular belief, and I didn't know this either, and I've watched every snap of Alabama football for the last 17 years, every single snap. I was shocked to know that their record is that good against teams that use tempo this significantly. That I thought was very, very interesting. The formations for Tennessee do make them very difficult, though. When you look at how Hendon Hooker really spreads the field and how Josh Heupel spreads the field and has receivers outside the numbers, that's significant because Hendon Hooker is completing 74% of his passes outside the numbers. It's the second best mark in the SEC, and that's SEC best 10.7 yards per attempt. So it's not like these are just dinks and dunks. Yeah, they're going to throw it at the line of scrimmage on hitch routes and now routes probably 7-8 times in the game, but they're also going to push the field from outside the numbers, and that's a difficult thing to deal with. Alabama has fared quite well with that. Up to this point of the year, they're allowing just 36% completion on passes thrown outside the numbers. That's the best in the FBS. So you have one of the best with how Tennessee throws it outside the numbers against one of the best with how Alabama defends it outside the numbers. It'll be interesting to see if Cedric Tillman's available. If he's not available, I'm hoping he is. He had that ankle procedure done. It's been out a few weeks. If he can get back, that'd be significant. But Brew McCoy and others have stepped up as well. And it'll also be interesting to see if Alabama utilizes that cheetah package that they used successfully last week with Will Anderson on the field, along with 2 other speed rushers, Dallas Turner and others. Will Anderson had 12 pressures last week. That was his career high, and it's the most in the game this year by any FBS player. So another bit of the conversation, and finally, before we put a bow on this matchup, Bryce Young versus Jalen Milroe. Can Bryce Young play? Based on the information that I have, it's not a foregone conclusion that he plays. It's also not a foregone conclusion that he doesn't play. I know that this has a lot to do with pain management. This has a lot to do with pain tolerance. I do think that anytime you're dealing with a throwing shoulder, consciously or subconsciously, it has an effect on how much command you have when delivering the football. I've had an SC joint sprain. I played. It was extremely painful, and I was not able to throw with the velocity that I was able to throw with beforehand. It took me about 3 weeks to be able to get back to feeling 100%. So that's different than the AC joint, but either way, it's difficult to deal with a shoulder injury. I know Bryce wants to play. I'd be surprised if Bryce didn't try to play, but I ultimately at this point don't know. I think it's going to be about pain tolerance. I think it's going to be about being able to manage what he feels like on game day. But if it is Milroe, know that this offense changes drastically. They run the ball 33% of the time when Bryce is in the game. When Milroe's in the game, that number ticks up to 64% of the time. Obviously, when it comes to passing, Bryce, a much more, advanced and polished passer at this point of his development. 9 yards per attempt for Alabama's offense when he's in the game, 5.7 when Milroe's in the game. So underneath stuff for Milroe for the most part. But the rushing numbers are static. 7.2 when Milroe's in the game, 7.2 when Bryce is in the game. And don't forget about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's really getting hot right now. The best 2-game run that we've seen from an Alabama running back since Derrick Henry back in 2015. He has 360 rushing yards in the last 2 games. So both teams really, really strong offensively. And shockingly, both teams very strong defensively as well. I lean Alabama. They've been in this situation before, and this is one of those unique circumstances where the home team actually has more pressure on them. Alabama, whether they win, whether they lose, are still in complete control of their own destiny. If they lose the game, they can still beat everybody in the SEC West and find their way back to the SEC championship game. If Tennessee loses, ultimately, do they control their own destiny? Yes, they do. But not, knowing that they still have some difficult games lying in front of them, a la Georgia, it's obviously a tougher situation to be in. And if, for whatever reason, Alabama gets off to a great start. What did I tell you a second ago about Mississippi State? They're plus 59 in first quarter scoring margin, right? Well, Alabama's first in the country, plus 77 scoring margin. So they are really a good starting football team. If Alabama gets off to a hot start, what will the feeling in Neyland Stadium be if Tennessee comes out of the gates a little bit slow? I don't know if there will. I'm just saying Alabama's a great starting football team, so Tennessee better start fast, because if those fans get restless, that's when the pressure starts to reside on the home team. I trust the team that's been here many, many, many times in the last decade against the team that is breaking through for what feels like the first time in a while. I lean Bama. I think it'll be a great game, and I hope it delivers for college football fans everywhere. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.